So, Roland, you've covered books like you said on Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, and now Magic Johnson, right? And you also mentioned in the author's note that your wife put together cassette tapes through the interviews throughout the years. Can you
Yeah, she
pinpoint?
digitized them. Back in the
She,
day, you had your cassette tape and you had to spin it and a thing and you're guessing where's it, and I was working so hard. I was doing 4, 5, 6 of these coffee table books
yep.
a year. I'd get paid 15K for one of these. And I had I'd end up with 90K in work back in the 80s and 90s doing that stuff. And I was
Wow.
interviewing people. Half the time I had kept all my cassette tapes, but I'm on such deadline, I can't find the interviews I
You
did.
can't find it.
And during the pandemic, I knew I'd done a bunch in 89, 90, and 91 with the Lakers, with Magic and all those dudes. And my wife digitized those things during the pandemic. Suddenly, all of these wonderful conversations,
That's awesome.
and they came alive, and it was like recovered history. And it was very special for me to hear that. And then I would hear things that were weird that popped up there. I'm probably getting off track, but Jerry Krause.
Yes.
In 91, I was covering a Lakers game with the Washington Bullets. Now, Jerry Krause had worked for 2 other NBA franchises as a scout. He had worked for the Lakers. Before that, he worked for the Baltimore Bullets that became the Washington Bullets. And Krause was just proud as a pumpkin. In that spring of 1991, the Bulls had broken out, and he knew he had a badass team. And so he went to Washington to hang out and sort of puffed up with pride, standing in the hallway there because those were the 2 places he had worked. And it was like his look at me now moment. And I
Yep.
was going down the locker room after the game to do some locker room interviews. I looked over there and saw Krause. I didn't know him then very well. And I said, damn, nobody's talking to that dude. I almost felt sorry for him. And so I sat there and did these interviews. He was talking about the Bulls, and he was just so proud, that that spring was kicking ass.
It was good. Yeah.
And they hadn't won a title yet, but here it was coming, and he felt it. And so I hadn't heard that tape since I had forgotten I'd done it. And so when my wife digitized, it popped up. Now, I spent hours and hours and hours with Krause during all the 90s, doing all the projects, history of the Bulls, big coffee table book. But it's loaded. It's an oral history of the Bulls. And now your Chicago Bulls came out in 95. But the whole thing was Krause, obviously, when I started there, Krause and Phil Jackson were already in a secret war with each other. And they had, Krause
Butt
had,
heads. Yeah.
oh man, and they're fighting over money. And it blew up into the Last Dance season where Pippen was traded, Kerr was traded. Michael had said he would leave if they didn't retain Phil, and Phil rode off into the sunset. So the whole thing, they could have won one, maybe 2 more. The whole thing broke up. And Krause was so bitter. He was so angry. And I interviewed him like 10 years after, in 2008. He said, I've got every videotape of every game of the whole Jordan era in Chicago. I've never looked at him once, he told me. Never looked at him. And then in 2013, when I was doing the biography of Michael, I called him.
Oh,
We
I gotta
talked a
hear this
long
conversation.
we talked a long time, and he had finally come to terms with everything that happened. He said for a long time Phil was easy to work with. Then he was not so easy. And he said, I'm glad I hired him. And he had come to terms with it. But the saddest thing in the world to me in listening to those tapes from back in the early 90s was how excited Krause was. And he just could not get out of his own way. And he did a really good work, but he was such a, you know, I when the Last Dance season was getting started, I'd gotten to know Phil Jackson real well, and I knew he's kind of playing me because he was using me to get at Krause.
Get across, yeah.
And he said, Krause won't give us any space. He wants on the team bus. Everywhere we go, there's Krause. And he said, and he told me this on the record, I've recorded it. He says, the last thing often Michael likes to do before he goes on the floor is go back in the John, get on the can. He said, Krause got this need for intimacy. He'll go back there and get in the next stall right when Michael's going. Pisses Michael off that this dude's come. And Michael, was abusing the crap out of Krause on the bus in front of the team. And so it's funny how those old tapes just brought up for me while I was doing the Magic book, all the sadness of that.
Yeah, it definitely seems like, Kraus was definitely happy at the time, and obviously as time went on, we knew what happened. But I guess, like, do you think Kraus was more so wanting the attention than, for putting the team together with Michael and Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman and Steve Kerr, like, over, Michael Jordan's spotlight? Like, do you think he
Krause
wanted the
told
most
me
credit?
in recorded interviews that he couldn't wait to rebuild the Bulls. He was going to show the world. He had hubris, I think is what they called it.
Yep.
That Greek. And Krause, Krause had been bullied, I think, a good bit in school. His athletic role was the third string catcher in high school. He would catch warm-ups. He talked about all of that. He was a baseball scout too. He came out of baseball. Moneyball showed that the scouts were sort of full of it.
Yeah.
And Krause was sitting there one day telling me, he's talking about Kirk Gibson. He's got that perfect face, perfect chin. Your scout, you can just see he's got the jaw. And he's not a Hollywood scout. He's not looking for an actor. He's looking for a freaking ball player. But that's how those scouts thought. You can
Yeah.
look at the guy and that's what the rebellion was against. But Krause did some amazing stuff. But boy, he was
Tough cookie.
painful. He was
Yeah.
painful to watch. It was painful to watch those crowds in Chicago just boo him. They hated him.
And so Roland, when you think of, like, the greatest of all time, right? Obviously, Michael Jordan will always be in that conversation, but a lot of people don't usually talk about Magic in the same capacity. Should they be in the same sentence? I feel like they should.
Yes. I mean, it's only words first. But Magic, he did something to the NBA. He made it fun. He made it a lot of fun. And it's hard to be that focused of a winner. Jordan was a winner. Jordan had scared the living fire out of everybody. He was the most testosterone going. And that floor, now there were some people who would stand up to him. Obviously, those Pistons punished him.
Yep.
But Jordan was Jordan was tough on his own teammates, really hard. Magic he just delivered in every way. Every building he went in, it started when he was in junior high. I mean, people would just go in, they go, man, this kid is fun. And he's just whoop-a-doodle throwing stuff around and everybody's going, whoa. And the description of the crowds in Lansing, Michigan, when Magic went to high school at Everett, you started at Everett as a sophomore, so he had 3 years there. And people drove from everywhere. You didn't have things on TV back then. Even the Big Ten didn't have really much of a TV package at all, and there was just nothing. And the crowds just had to be there to watch him. And it was really amazing. I spent hours and hours with his 2 high school coaches, with Dr. Charles Tucker, the school psychologist that eventually became his agent, was his mentor as a teenager. And the 2 high school coaches have died in the last year. But those guys were so good. And, I mean, I interviewed them over and over and over again, just giving their memories a workout, double checking, and they had they had indelible memories of every little thing about Magic.
About Magic, yeah.
And that made the book fun. There was a lot of racial strife because they were busing for integration. And that was largely, the integration in the South was problematic, but most of the busing happened in the North.
North, yeah.
And that was problematic. But, it was problematic in New England, problematic in the Midwest, just wherever. And so it was complicated, but Magic just had that ability. There was nobody telling him to play this way. The coaches just went, oh, you can do this? Oh, we're going to let you have it. And Magic just sort of rose up as a young teen and dictated how everything was going to be. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say, Roland, what's pretty amazing too is he was dyslexic. When you just think of what he's been through in his childhood and growing up, and I think it actually made him even more powerful as a person and on the court because he was so intelligent and paying attention to the little things.
Tremendous intelligence. A lot of the greatest players I found, I like studying great competitors.
Absolutely.
They are incredible listeners. Dean Smith had never had somebody, especially a freshman, who could listen like Jordan. Magic, unbelievable listener. Kobe was really hard-headed, but still a great listener.
Absolutely.
And all those guys were, they just have a combination of skills and talent and intelligence. Just really exceptional. Exceptional mothers, very different mothers. Great competitors have exceptional mothers a lot of times. And the fathers are not too bad either.
Yeah. And so Roland, obviously Magic, The Life of Magic Johnson is a book that you can find anywhere on Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
What else do you have in the works? Because you're a basketball encyclopedia, my friend. You know a lot about the game of basketball. You've seen it all. Do you have anything else in the works that you want to throw out to the audience?
Yeah, I'm doing projects that have ties with films. And so it's a different thing. I'm learning about it. It's a lot of fun. I'm doing a David Stern project because that's basically where all the bodies are buried.
Buried.
David Stern is an amazing commissioner.